Why wise people never explain themselves, a Jungian perspective. Desperate excuses make you polite, but you are actually committing devastating psychological self-abandonment. Every justification is a pathetic plea for the right to exist. Watch to the very end to uncover the terrifying truth behind your guilt and the exact weapon to shatter your invisible prison. The illusion of politeness and the prison of overexplaining. Look at your hands. Do you see the invisible chains wrapped tightly around your wrists? They tighten their suffocating grip every single time you stare at that blinding white screen, watching a simple, sovereign no morph into a desperate, sprawling paragraph of pathetic excuses. Think back to the exact moment you last tried to decline an invitation you loathed, a demand you couldn't possibly meet, or a phone call that felt like a physical, crushing weight on your chest. You didn't just walk away. You sat there, heart pounding wildly against your ribs, your fingers hovering over the keyboard like a trembling prisoner awaiting a death sentence. You typed. You deleted. You fabricated a tragedy just plausible enough, an apology just subservient enough to justify your utter exhaustion. And when you finally hit send, that sickening familiar knot twisted violently in your gut as you stared unblinking at the screen, paralyzed by the sight of those 3 little dancing dots indicating the other person was typing. What exactly were you waiting for in that agonizing, deafening silence? A response? No, you were waiting for an absolute pardon. You were holding your breath, begging on your knees for another human being to stamp approved on your fundamental right to exist, your right to choose, and your right to simply feel tired. If this visceral terror feels uncomfortably familiar, you are not alone, but you are in grave psychological danger. Before we unravel this dark truth and arm you with the ultimate weapon of liberation, I urge you to hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is the vital, beating heart of this channel, giving us the relentless drive to keep crafting these deep, transformative videos for you in the future. The Inner Multiverse warmly welcomes you to a journey of profound awakening, where we do not coddle your illusions. Modern society has masterfully draped this psychological cowardice in the glittering velvet cloak of kindness. We hallucinate that vomiting 1,000 reasons for our boundaries is an act of supreme empathy, a definitive proof of our refined social grace. Let us shatter this psychotic delusion right here and now. Under the unforgiving, piercing lens of psychoanalysis, particularly through the monumental insights of entity people, Carl Jung to endlessly justify your inner boundaries is not politeness. It is the most devastating, soul-crushing manifestation of self-abandonment. When you feel cornered into explaining exactly why your energy is depleted or why you simply do not want to participate, you are signing a toxic subconscious contract. You are whispering a dark, terrifying confession into the void. My feelings, my boundaries, and my sovereign decisions have absolutely zero intrinsic value. They only become real if, and only if, they pass the rigorous, cynical logic test of a complete stranger. You are dragging your authentic identity, your rawest internal needs, out into a blindingly lit courtroom, eagerly awaiting the gavel strike of collective validation. In doing so, you systematically strip yourself of your own independent humanity. Carl Jung relentlessly warned us of the catastrophic danger inherent in dissolving the authentic I, to appease the ravenous expectations of the crowd. When you over-explain, you declare absolute bankruptcy on the validity of your own subjective reality. You treat yourself as a defective, fundamentally broken entity that must violently extract legitimacy from the consensus of the outside world. You think you are building a bridge of understanding, but in truth, you are paving a direct, inescapable highway straight into the darkest cell of psychological dependency. This annihilation of the self does not happen overnight in a dramatic, fiery explosion. It is a terrifyingly silent, slow erosion. It is the daily, microscopic surrender of your inner psychological territories until there is absolutely nothing left but a hollow, echoing shell, an automaton operating purely on fearful, knee-jerk reactions to external stimuli. That sickening, churning guilt you feel when you dare to withhold an explanation, that is not your noble conscience speaking. That is the muffled, agonizing scream of a soul that has been chained in the basement of your mind for far too long. It is the ultimate symptom of a profound existential dread, The horrifying realization that you are not actually living your own life, but merely playing a scripted character meticulously designed to keep an ungrateful audience entertained. As long as you perceive the act of explaining yourself as a mandatory tax you must pay just to breathe the same air as others, you remain a willing, obedient slave in the agonizing prison of your own mind. The architects of our invisible prison. To understand how to break free from this self-imposed captivity, we must first shine a light on the original architects of our invisible prison. We did not arrive in this world wired to apologize for our own existence. Watch a child for just 5 minutes. They possess an unblemished, fiercely protective relationship with their own desires. When they are tired, they sleep. When they do not want to be held, they pull away. They do not draft an essay of mitigating circumstances to soften the blow of their refusal. So where did we lose this primal sovereignty? The conditioning began so early and so quietly that we mistook it for the natural order of the world. We were taught, systematically and relentlessly, that our inherent worth was inextricably tied to our compliance. We learned that a simple no was perceived as an act of rebellion, an insult to authority, or a failure of love. To survive the complex social dynamics of our families, schools, and eventually our workplaces, we developed what Carl Jung called the persona, a meticulously crafted mask designed entirely to meet the expectations of the external world. Over time, this mask became our primary interface with reality. We started believing that our raw, unfiltered needs were inherently offensive, dangerous, or invalid unless they were properly sanitized and justified. Think about the times you were told you were being difficult simply for stating a preference, or selfish for needing a moment of solitude. Those subtle but profound moments of rejection taught you a devastating lesson. Your truth is not enough. Therefore, you must build a fortress of logic around your boundaries so that no one can accuse you of being a bad person. This is the birthplace of the overexplanation. It is a defense mechanism born from a deep, unhealed childhood wound that whispers you will be abandoned if you are not entirely accommodating. When you type out those long paragraphs of excuses to decline an invitation, you are not acting as a conscious adult. You are regressing into the frightened child who is desperately trying to prove they are still good and worthy of connection. You are trying to control the other person's perception of you because you have tethered your entire emotional stability to their approval. But in trying to manage everyone else's feelings, you have entirely neglected the most critical relationship you will ever have, the one with your own authentic self. We trade our psychological freedom for the fleeting, hollow comfort of not rocking the boat. Yet, a mask worn for too long eventually begins to suffocate the face beneath it, leading to a breaking point we can no longer ignore. The exhaustion of the performing self. There comes a moment in every chronic overexplainer's life when the sheer weight of this constant performance becomes mathematically impossible to sustain. You know this feeling intimately. It is not just a physical tiredness, it is a profound, bone-deep spiritual fatigue. It is the exhaustion of a debtor who is endlessly borrowing energy from their future to pay off the perceived social obligations of the present. When you are constantly justifying your boundaries, you are leaking your vital life force into a bottomless void. You begin to feel a quiet, simmering resentment, not necessarily toward the people asking things of you, but toward yourself. You resent your own inability to simply stand your ground. This internal conflict is what Carl Jung referred to as the shadow encroaching upon the conscious mind. The parts of you that you have suppressed, your anger, your exhaustion, your absolute right to say enough, do not simply vanish because you refuse to give them a voice. They fester in the dark. This is why you feel that sudden, inexplicable flash of rage when your phone buzzes with a simple request. The request itself might be harmless, but to your exhausted psyche, it is another heavy stone placed upon a back that is already breaking. You have spent years treating your own energy as a public utility, free for anyone to tap into, provided they ask nicely. You have convinced yourself that if you just explain your situation perfectly, people will finally give you the permission to rest. But here is the tragic irony. The more you explain, the more you invite negotiation. By offering reasons, You are inadvertently giving the other person a list of obstacles to overcome. If you say you cannot attend because you are too busy, they will offer a different time. If you say you are tired, they will suggest a low-energy activity. Your explanations are not boundaries. They are the opening bids in a negotiation you never wanted to have. You find yourself trapped in a labyrinth of your own making, realizing with quiet horror that the validation you are seeking from the outside world is an illusion. No one can give you permission to honor your own needs. That authority belongs to you alone, and the longer you wait for someone else to grant it, the deeper you sink into the quicksand of self-betrayal. This profound exhaustion is not a sign of defeat, but the very catalyst required for your emancipation. The art of the sovereign declaration. To reclaim your life, you must learn the excruciatingly difficult, transformative art of the sovereign declaration. This is the practice of stating your boundary without the trailing commas, without the soft-pedaling apologies, and without the desperate need to make the other person comfortable with your choice. It sounds terrifying because it requires you to dismantle decades of ingrained social survival tactics. When you first attempt this, your entire nervous system will rebel. You will type, "I won't be able to make it," and your fingers will physically ache to add, "because my car broke down and I have a headache and I'm so sorry." You must sit on your hands. You must stare at the screen and feel the intense, uncomfortable heat of the guilt washing over you. Acknowledge that feeling. It is normal. It is the withdrawal symptom of a mind detoxing from the drug of external validation. Setting a boundary without over-explaining is an act of profound self-respect. It is a declaration that your subjective experience is valid simply because it is yours. You do not need to be sick to stay home. You do not need a scheduling conflict to decline a meeting. "I don't want to," "I don't have the capacity right now," or simply "no" are complete sentences. They are sovereign states of being. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires the courage to separate your identity from the collective mass. It demands that you tolerate the discomfort of being misunderstood. Some people will be disappointed, some may even be angry. Let them be. Their emotional reaction is their responsibility, not a problem for you to solve. When you stop rushing in to manage their disappointment, you are actually honoring their autonomy, allowing them the space to feel their feelings without your interference. More importantly, you are finally honoring your own. You are building an internal fortress where your energy is protected by a solid wall, rather than a fragile picket fence with 1,000 open gates. It takes immense courage to stand in the silence that follows a simple no, but within that silence lies the exact psychological freedom you have been desperately searching for your entire life. As the noise of external expectations finally begins to fade, a new, undeniable clarity begins to emerge from within. The rebirth of the authentic I G out your energy through endless justifications. A remarkable transformation takes place. You will wake up one morning and notice an unfamiliar sensation: quietness. The frantic, churning anxiety that used to accompany every incoming message is gone, replaced by a solid, grounded center of gravity. This is the rebirth of the authentic I. You are no longer a fragmented collection of apologies and excuses. You are an integrated, sovereign individual. You will find that the people who remain in your life are the ones who genuinely respect you, not the ones who merely found you useful. The relationships that relied on your constant subservience will naturally wither away, and while that may bring a period of mourning, it is ultimately a profound shedding of dead weight. You will begin to discover what you actually enjoy, what you genuinely desire, because your inner voice is no longer being drowned out by the deafening roar of the crowd's expectations. Your energy, once scattered to the four winds in an attempt to please everyone, returns to you. You can pour it into your passions, your true connections, and your own healing. You realize that politeness is not about self-sacrifice. True kindness is only possible when it is offered freely, from a place of abundance rather than a place of fearful obligation. A yes only has value if a no is an equally safe option. By mastering the courage to simply decline, you have paradoxically made your agreements infinitely more meaningful. You have stepped out of the blindingly lit courtroom of collective judgment and walked out into the open air of your own life. The chains you thought were locked tightly around your wrists were never actually fastened. You were just holding on to them because you forgot you had the power to let go. You have finally remembered. You are free. And finally, conclusion. The journey from chronic overexplanation to genuine self-sovereignty is not merely a behavioral shift. It is a profound psychological emancipation. For years, we have lived within an invisible prison built by early childhood conditioning, mistakenly believing that our inherent worth depended entirely on our compliance and our ability to manage the emotions of others. This relentless performance inevitably births a bone-deep spiritual exhaustion, draining our vital life force into a bottomless void of endless justifications and defensive logic. Yet, this very exhaustion is not a sign of defeat. It serves as the necessary catalyst for our awakening. By recognizing that our over-explanations are not actual boundaries, but rather opening bids for negotiation, we begin to dismantle the false persona constructed to appease the external world. The antidote to this self-betrayal lies in the art of the sovereign declaration, the courage to state our limits with a simple, unadorned no. Though initially terrifying to the nervous system, enduring the withdrawal symptoms of the need for external validation is entirely necessary to reclaim our authentic self. When we stop sanitizing our needs just to make others comfortable, we stop bleeding out our energy. We step out of the blinding courtroom of endless public judgment and back into the quiet, grounded power of our own lives. Ultimately, a boundary set without excuse is the highest form of self-respect. It naturally purifies our relationships, ensuring that when we finally choose to say yes, it stems from genuine, joyful abundance rather than fearful obligation. The profound lesson. Your boundaries do not require a defense attorney, and your needs do not require justification to be valid. The compulsion to over-explain is often a trauma response rooted in the fear of abandonment, which inadvertently turns your personal limits into a negotiation. True psychological freedom is achieved only when you develop the courage to tolerate the discomfort of being misunderstood, actively releasing the impossible burden of managing other people's emotional reactions to your truth. How to apply this to your life? Implement the 24-hour pause. When faced with a request or invitation, never answer immediately. Use the phrase, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." This creates a buffer, preventing your nervous system from defaulting to an automatic, people-pleasing yes or a rambling excuse. Practice the full stop. Consciously practice ending your sentences with a period instead of a comma. Replace "I can't make it because I've had a terrible week" and with "I won't be able to attend." Hit send, put your phone down, and walk away. Sit in the fire of guilt. When you set a firm boundary, you will feel guilty. Expect it. Instead of rushing to fix the other person's disappointment to alleviate your own discomfort, observe the guilt as simply a withdrawal symptom of a mind detoxing from external validation. Let the silence sit. Question for the community: what is one specific situation or relationship in your life where you find it the hardest to simply say no without giving a long explanation? Please politely share your experiences in the comments section below so we can all read, reflect, and learn from each other's perspectives. Support the channel. Finding peace starts when you stop explaining yourself. Subscribe to the Inner Multiverse to continue your path to self-mastery. But what happens when your awareness becomes too heavy to carry? Uncover the truth about the curse of hyper-awareness in our deep dive into the world of deep thinkers. Click to reveal the secret.